Hello and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode number 156. My guest in this episode is Philippa Smethurst, and Philippa is a counselor, a psychotherapist, and supervisor and author with over 30 years experience in that field or in those fields. And in this episode, we talk about her book called 20 Ways to Break Free from Trauma. And we talk about other things as well, but it was lovely having Philippa as a guest, and perhaps we'll have her back. But I invite you now to enjoy this episode and hope that there are good takeaways for you in this, and I will make sure that the information to find out more about Philippa's work or to access the book, that will all be down in the description field. So thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. And I would like to welcome Philippa Smethurst to the IdeaCast interview series. I'm looking forward to speaking with her as well as bringing her work to the awareness of my subscribers and to folks who happen to come in and discover this conversation on Spotify and YouTube. And YouTube audience, welcome to you all on that very subject. Philippa, welcome. Glad to have you here today.
Welcome. Well, welcome to you to talk to me.
To your world, right? Yeah. And that's what I want to explore is your world. And your world is our world. We're, as you point out in your book that you wrote, 20 Ways to Break Free from Trauma, which is the sort of essence of this conversation. You mentioned this, and I think that's maybe a good way to touch off the conversation is we're not in life alone, right? We're not in this thing that we do alone. So, yeah, I think that's such a kernel, right, of wisdom.
And as you said that, Justin, I'm thinking of John Donne, no man, of course it was, not politically correct, but no man is an island. And I think in our individualistic age, we do tend to think, and especially with trauma, my goodness, all our connections are cut off to others because we're full of trauma responses. And also the other bit is we're cut off to ourselves. So it can be miserable. So if we can remember that we're not on an island and that we are connected, that's our salvation, right?
Indeed. Indeed.
Oh, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I have spent a few years trying to understand the human condition in my own little way. And yeah, if there's one thing that resonates through the thread of, resiliency and anti-fragility and all these things that we aspire to, and Stoicism is very popular, is that we must mind that connectedness, and we must mind our respective individuation, but individuation is a complex term, and so that it is not so much that we are isolated, it is that we are individuated, but nonetheless unitary, within the species and within our psychocultural domains. So it gets very confusing for us though, because I think culturally we, as you said, the individualist mentality and the mantra of how we program our introjection and program ourselves and things like that, it can seem as though we are very much isolated and cut off in our own little siloed environments and stuff.
And I have to say to my clients, I say to them, because of course we're in an intimate setting that I've been working in for 30 years, I say to them, as you describe whatever it is, it sounds like you believe you're a solo operator, that you're going through as if you haven't got any help here. And also that may be something they're telling me about the outside world, right? But also it's like the same thing with you and me. Do you imagine that I'm interested? Of course, they may not, because they may not have felt safe with anybody ever. I have worked with many, many very troubled clients, and they come to me and they're in trauma responsiveness, hence the 20. We go from one to the other. It's a hairy ride. They're taken over by these responses.
Yeah.
But once they get the idea, which takes a lot of getting, that what I am doing is sitting still, attentively using all the things I'm using to let them know that what they think and feel is worth something to me. Sounds a simple thing for those of us who've had that experience. But if you haven't, it's a profound thing. It's a proper aha moment. Like, she thinks that I'm worth listening to, that what's coming out of me, what I think and feel is valid. I literally never, ever had that experience.
Right. Before we lay a full indictment of Western individualist mentality, I guess, to when we unpack your book, we're going to discover that trauma itself is an individuation process in maybe a negatively valent light, but it is that which separates us. And like you said, it contracts us.
Yeah.
It causes us to, form spurious narratives about, our worthiness and all these things. This will all unfold as we dive into your book.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is. There are layers. When I was looking through your website, I noticed that you had attended the Metanoia Institute, and that word is, I think, doing a lot of heavy lifting in the context of what you've been talking about. I love that. I love that metanoia was used, because that is, that liberation. Yeah, the extrication from the entrapment of both trauma and, of course, more generally, our Western sensibility of, I'm a rock, I'm an island, and all these.
All of that.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Yeah, it is like that. I'm a rock, I'm an island. I actually do think that. Yeah, but, it's in order to get the idea of metanoia, to think you could change, you have to understand where you are and have that. And then it's like, oh, so if that's true, then I can relax, I can settle down, I can be me, and then I might have a choice about what I do with my life. That's the individuation.
Indeed. It's a perspectival shift. Yeah, it's a perspectival shift.
It's a profound thing, and it's a wonderful job that I do, To me, it's a really hard job sometimes, but to me, it's the best job, for me anyway, because I get to see people changing in front of my eyes. That's cool.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons you're here, is because I love to put my little spotlight and my little cache of social relevance. Here you are, and let's talk about this, because again, I think it is, I would say, urgent, in modernity, and we're post-meta-modernity, or wherever we are, that these ideas be discussed and shared. One of the most powerful utilities, and I want to talk about your background and your biography, but I one more tangent on my end, and then we'll move into that after your response. But one of the most powerful utilities of your book, and it's not exclusive to your book, is that you have anecdotes and case studies of people, and you tell their stories. And for me, I objectively love narrative, and I love hearing people's stories of their lives, dark or light or whatever, or the transition over. But that you use that as a utility, I think, is such a powerful means of communication and connection. It is granting the reader, and it happened personally for me in the reading of your book, insight to the fact that, like you said, I am not alone. I did not suffer this exclusively. I did not move through this experience exclusively. That is laudable. That's part of what you're doing in your book and in your practice more broadly. Yeah.
I wasn't going to put the stories in because the first, these things have such genesis, right? Start was more ideas, theories, and then a very, very clever friend of mine who's written books said, that's great, but he said, it's too psychotherapy. We need to ground it in stories. And of course, they're composites from 30 years of practice. A few of them are actually the real stories, and they've got the real names because they wanted to have the real names.
Okay.
But most of them are disguised, but they've all had to give their consent.
Yeah.
Which is a process in itself. But
what a gift of them to do that too.
I know, because it's a gift of them. Yeah.
It's very intuitive that you would say, I don't want this story out there. I don't want to share my story. And, but so for what a heartfelt or heart-centered, expression, of generosity to fellow humanity. Yeah.
And actually most of them said yes.
Oh,
because
good.
I've been helped, I've moved on from my trauma, I've individuated, I've moved to post-traumatic growth. And yes, through you and through this process, which I'm kind of in awe of. And so why wouldn't I want to
Yeah.
share my story? Because if it helps somebody else, yay. Now that is
Yeah.
generous. It is
Yeah.
generous. It's
Yeah.
proper generous.
And I like that you said individuated in again, another contextual lensing, because, we think perhaps like Jungian individuation, where it is that which, you move into another space of selfness or beingness that is, transcendent of, where you were before. At least that's a crude take on the
That's
Jungian
exactly right.
individuation, right? But it's an ascension to a better other expression that again may be more valently positively valent. Or
Yeah, and just on that, I mean, we can weave around with the conversation, but the last chapter of the book, which is the chapter 20, is twice as long, and the subject matter is post-traumatic. I nearly said dramatic. Post-traumatic growth. We hear about PTSD or PTSD all the time. And of course, that's trauma's legacy. But post-traumatic growth, do we hear about that? I don't think we do. But I think you're right, Justin, that actually we can claim goodies from trauma. Not everybody can. That's not to say you have to, but sometimes an extra dimension of life, a new purpose, a new sense of gratitude, a sense of the beauty of life, all these things can come through the hard graft of going through really, really a real adversity. So post-traumatic growth is a real thing, and we need to talk about it more.
Yes, no, I do. And we will keep some continuity, but like you said, we can move around, because I would encourage people to buy your book and read it, and then come back to the conversation. You'd be like, oh yeah, okay, now I get it. So we're teasing them in a way, but but I love post-traumatic growth, because again, that's the individuation process, that's the transcendence, and it is that which is the wellspring of the generosity and the aha and the clarity, the relensing that one has when one is again extricated out of that which trauma does, to us. And I liken it to when you meet a cancer survivor. This is the somatic representation of this kind of behavior or phenomenology, is that the person who was given the death sentence, but they moved through it, their body healed, they're in remission, and man, their zest for life and the joie de vivre and all that is just off the charts, because they're like, I was written off, I was at death's door. And here I am celebrating life, because I don't take it for granted anymore. And I think there's a convergence or overlap there when we go into, again, the psycho-emotional domain. Yeah.
And we notice life in a different flavor. So there's a kind of story, I think there was a Dennis Potter, I think he was a playwright. He was dying, but he kind of accepted it completely. And he was relishing the time he had left. And he looked out of his window and he saw an apple tree or a cherry tree with blossom. And he was poetic about the beauty of that pink blossom. And he said he never felt the beauty of pink blossom in his life until that moment. So I think you're right. That's something else. Goes beyond words.
It is. Absolutely. So let's do this. Let's talk about you for a moment, and then we're going to put it in reverse and go back to the front of your book and build up, like, let's go through the muck first, and then, we'll revisit the transcendence and the metanoia that occurs in one's journey. So you are a trained in America therapist, psychologist, and so in the UK. I'm sure licensure is very close and similar, but so first of all, I guess what inspired you to move into this mode of healing arts and mode of work, of being I like vulnerary. That's a word, though. Vulnerary person. That who is like a nurse is vulnerary. They say.
Oh, that's a good
I'm sure the etymology goes back to vulnerable, which is to make oneself open, right? So,
I don't know that word, so you've taught me.
I found it one day, and I'm like, oh, I'll keep you.
Vulnerary.
Vulnerary, but I think the root is vulner, which like we could say vulnerable. But as I understand it, vulnerary means that a person who is affording care and so like a nurse. So, but anyway, the vulnerary.
Does it come from the word voluntary a bit as well?
Perhaps, yeah,
Or VU or
volunteer.
VO.
Yeah, I've never looked at the etymology, and I
No, it
love
doesn't
doing
matter.
that, so
Yeah,
I'll have to
yeah.
check that out.
That's interesting.
Anyway,
Yeah. Anyway,
tell us
how
your
can I?
lovely origin story
Yeah,
before I go
so
on
my
too many more.
origin. Yeah, so there's lots of layers. I had some trauma earlier in my life, which I probably won't go into. But the big thing was when I was a young woman. I went to China, along with quite a few other folks from the US, in fact,
Okay.
uh, on a program of teaching in a university. I was in Fuzhou in the south of China, but I happened to stumble upon, by sheer coincidence, a time of mega history for China. So it was 88, 89 and 90, those years I was there. And I was teaching my university students, and in 89, the pressure was ramping up with the students protesting against the government. Deng Xiaoping, as was the leader then, and it was including my own students, although it's mostly the students in the capital, Beijing, which was, in the north. But we didn't know what was going to come. You don't when you're living something, right? But of course, what did happen was the tanks came in to the square of Tiananmen on June the 4th, 89, and lives were extinguished, and so were hopes and dreams. And I wasn't in Beijing. I was in Nanjing, actually, that weekend, which is the southern capital. But my students in Fuzhou were very traumatized because it was their siblings, it was their friends, some of whom had died, or they worried who had died and who had not. You can imagine. And I was close to my students. I'd worked with them for a year. And so when I sat with them, they were weeping and they were inconsolable on so many levels. They thought they'd have to go back to the countryside, but their hopes for changing their country were dashed. They may even have lost friends. And I didn't realise it at the time until I studied all this trauma stuff. But I was traumatised secondarily by that because it was such a time in history. How did I know? First of all, to witness something unbearable. My instinct from that moment onwards was to stay calm and still and to withstand, respectfully. This is somebody who needs to be witnessed. That's always been something that I've done in everything I've done since then. The other thing is the time scrambling. So I was there for 2 years, but the heavy time was 4 months. It felt like 5 years because in trauma, time is scrambled. It either speeds up, it slows down. Things from the past come back. You lose the present moment, or you're trapped in a kind of vortex. So you lose your temporal markers, you could say. And I think that maybe people have said that even in recent times, during COVID, certainly in the UK, we had lockdowns, we had no lockdowns, we had lockdowns. It was such a kind of mess. Nobody really remembers, some people don't anyway, what happened when our time temporal markers were scrambled. So witnessing pain and the temporal mess up. So that was quite something. But also what it did to me was lead me on a path to train as a psychotherapist. And because I thought this is a cool thing to do. I perhaps felt that by listening, I could offer something simple to draw alongside others. Trained as a counsellor, trained as a psychotherapist, got interested in all the different theories. And then as time went on, trained in sensory motor psychotherapy, which is what the book draws a lot on, not just the mind, but the body. In the old days, we used to think if we just told the story of what happened to us, that would be enough. Well, A, it doesn't work. A, because we don't always remember the story. And B, because by telling the story, it can get us all steamed up more trauma. We can exacerbate. So the sensory motor, which is based on the work of Pat Ogden and Ron Kurtz, brings in the body, and it's not just them, so many other psychotherapy trainings do this now in the last 10, 20 years, realize that we're a whole species, we're bodies and minds. The trauma's held in the body. We can find our trauma by attending to our bodies, but also our bodies can help us heal in all kinds of ways. So that's how I got into it, I suppose. I think the turning point was Tiananmen. And I've been on a quest with it ever since, really. But I didn't realise the Tiananmen piece until I'd written the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So I don't put a lot of myself in the book in terms of anecdotes or anything like that.
Right, right.
Mostly because I'm so busy explaining trauma, giving stuff, writing about other people's stories, and it's not about me. So I didn't put myself in, but it's only in talking about the book, talking about why, like you're asking me, I realised that it was absolutely all there in my own story. I was 28 when Tiananmen happened.
Okay.
At 30, I was already training to be a psychotherapist at the Metanoia Institute.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I, like you, thought metanoia is exactly it.
No, it's such an appropriate term. And I think that's, so to reiterate what you just said, that in the moment, in experiencing Tiananmen intimately, I saw it on CNN. I was about 20 when it happened. And, you were more intimately involved because you had connection with persons that were deeply, affected by that.
And in the country. Yeah.
In that moment, did you self-evaluate and say, well, did you intellectualize it and maybe buffer yourself and just say, well, this was awful and we have to soldier on or what do you think your initial response was that you then later discovered to be that something that was stowed away as a really impactful traumatic experience?
What an interesting experience. Do you know, I think what it was, and I often say this to people, I think it was heartbreak.
Okay.
So, being next to these students who were wailing and distressed was heartbreaking to me. That their pain spoke to me, and I thought, that's something special. It's worth us staying with. You have an amazing psychiatrist from the US called Scott Peck. I think he might be dead now, but he wrote The Road Less Travelled.
Okay.
And I was in America and going through a very difficult time myself, not long after Tiananmen. And I opened his book, The Road Less Travelled, and I was on a Greyhound bus, and it said, life is full of problems. Our biggest challenge is to face these problems and to learn and grow from this. However, and pain, problems and pain. But we as human beings are adept at doing anything rather than facing it. We run from it, we run from the hills, we face other realities, we construct delusions, but we are pretty adept at not facing our pain. But if we do, we can transform. And I read those words and I felt them at a visceral level as being true. I don't know if you've had the experience of reading something and somebody's written it and you think, I know that.
Yeah.
But nobody had ever articulated it.
Right. That
so it's like a moment of meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can remember it to this day. It's like, okay. So that connected with the Tiananmen was like, okay, I need to find myself a really good psychotherapy course and I need to do the research and find the best. And I want any flaky course. I want the McCoy.
Right.
Because I'm like, this is too important. So I went to the Metanoia Institute, which was the McCoy, is the McCoy. It was proper, solid 4 years training where you had to do your own therapy, not just, 10 sessions. You had to do years of therapy.
Okay.
Because you learn how to be a therapist from having your own.
Yeah.
We can only go with somebody else where we've gone ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And the term transference, countertransference comes to mind when you say that, and not just in the cliche way where, you know, you become the mother to your, hey, it's more that you are embodying and envisaging the role of that archetypal character or whatever that is the wounded person, and then it's again salient or apparent to you. So that you were that was part of your formation and your training, I think, is so essential.
Yeah.
You know, that you're not. I interviewed a medical humanities professor, and she works closely with psychiatry and medical students. And she wrote a couple of books that are challenging the DSM-5 to have more patient involvement, anecdotal, plurality of anecdote to contribute to the work that will only improve the work. And she speaks to that kind of mentality that there's high towers of academia and intellectualism or intellectualizing of what you're working with. And I think to have the humanity in there and the a priori or a posteriori knowledge rather than just a priori knowledge, I
Yeah.
think is valuable.
Yeah. Yeah. And so sometimes going back to that person who said she could see that I really valued her and I was
Mm-hmm.
calm when she was doing all her roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
That could only happen because inside of me, this is the countertransferential bit,
Mm-hmm.
I have my own young ones, my young Philippas, right? My little 2 or 3 year old that are distressed as well, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I have to have looked at those. I need to have done enough work on those. I've got them like here, as it were, underneath my arm, because that's where they are. They sit here.
Okay. Okay.
Right? And so because they're sitting here comfortably, like I would have an actual baby,
Cradling.
I
Yeah.
can talk to you, or if you're my client, you know, doing your roller coaster bit and out of your tree, and I know I'm okay because we're here.
You're secure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if I'm not really grounded,
Yeah.
then there'd be 2 of us.
You'll be on the roller coaster with her. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so great. That's so
Yeah.
awesome.
And also, if they are tucked up inside of me, I've got some space to, as you put it, imagine what's really going on for this person.
Right.
To step
Right.
into their shoes.
Yeah. The empathetic connection.
Of course, my little ones will be agitated. They'll be responding, right? We're connected, of course.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I will be noticing that and having okay, I've got a bit of a thing in my stomach going on now. Is that me or is it them?
Yeah. Yeah. But
So,
what an informative process though, because that gives you information, I think, you know, that
totally.
filter it, process it, and then as a professional, you know how to then reciprocate with what was given to you by the patient. So
Yeah, give it back. You give it
Yeah.
back, you know. So
Yeah.
you're a mirror. You say, well, I think you're feeling like this because I noticed I
Mm-hmm.
was feeling something. And I imagine that's probably what you're feeling. Is it?
Yeah.
Let's check it out. You know, I might not be right, but seems to me, you know, you're feeling really, really distressed about this. And then you might have a little image in your head that won't go away.
Right.
If I have an image that won't go away, I usually will try it out with the client.
Mm-hmm.
Got this image of a whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you should say that because it fits
Right. Right. Right.
the power.
And that's yeah, of course, of course. And that's what I love about your inclusion of anecdotes and case examples and stories from others, narratives of others, because I was getting that mirroring effect and a minor transference going on, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, in my own little litany of traumas, micro traumas or whatever I had in my life, you know, I'm like connection, and then I can see where then there was the work through on that, you know, and the way out, you know, to remediate that. So again, that's what I love about the power of the anecdote and the narrative sharing is that it can be transformative, just from a passive exposure like that. So
good.
And to speak to your one other thing that I just find absolutely wonderful is I have interviewed cognitive scientists in my little show that I've done, and I love embodied cognition. Well, there's all the E's, but the embodied cognition I think is something that should be, again, part of the tool chest, as you've been saying, to recognize the somatic response, the somatic storage, the storehouse. The engram is greater than the brain. That's like storage of memory, storage of response. So that you do that in your work, I think, is McCoy as well. That we don't just go, this is the slab it's the CPU that processes. Yeah, it's all of us, our entirety. Yeah.
Yeah, and just a small example. A client who is stuck in fight flight. You're so noticing, you seem to be really wanting to run. How do you know that? Because you've seen their little legs going like this. Literally. Yeah. Or maybe not literally doing that, but twitching.
Oh, yeah. Like a rabbit.
And it's because, yeah. And actually by spotting that, you don't literally want them to run from the room. But actually by spotting it, they go, yeah, I do want to run. The whole body says, get me out of here. Okay. Yeah. That's because we're dealing with something that's really scary. And when you're scared, you really want to run. But when we get it, guess what? They no longer have the twitchiness. We spotted it.
They can let it go.
Okay. She really sees that. She gets it. Okay. So I don't need to run, right?
Right.
So
and what a wonderful... Yeah, and what a wonderful validation from the patient's part, a point of view to you, to connect with you, is to say, oh my God, yes, they got it. or they got that out of me, and it's like, oh yeah, because what a way to bond. And again, that whole, the connection, transference, countertransference thing in positive ways. So powerful. So very powerful. Yeah. Let's open up the first chapter of your book, if you're good.
Let's do that.
And in the yes, thank you. in the initial unpacking of traumatic onboarding, you reference hypo and hyper reactions, and there was under and overwhelm and blue, red, and green zones. Let's talk about that, because you have infographics. Look at you. Thank you for coming prepared. Yeah.
Are we going to be mostly an audible thing, or will people sometimes?
No, YouTube video primarily. It is on Spotify. Great. So for those of you on Spotify, to give you a description, we have an infographic. We were talking about red, blue, and green zones, and there is boiling and freezing on a thermometer as an analogy, and there's too much feeling on the hot end and not enough hypo reaction on the bottom. So just to give you for those of you who cannot see the chart that we're going to discuss.
Yeah.
So.
Perfect. So this is a trauma thermometer showing what happens when, from the bottom of our spine upwards, there's a whoosh of arousal and hormonal activation from the bottom of the spine up the spinal cord into the limbic area of the brain. And that's what happens in trauma. It's like a great big tsunami wave coming into the limbic, overwhelming it and shutting down temporarily the frontal cortex, so we can't think, we can't remember, we can't link. That might pass. No lasting trauma, right? Trauma is what lasts. As I say, sometimes it's like a kind of Coke bottle, that has fizz. It comes up, it's going to be expressed. If it's expressed, it may not last, but sometimes the fizz stays inside. So the hyper, as you say, is the too much, and the body can feel very buzzy. Or, they want to even rip my skin off. It can really, really, very difficult to live with that amount of unprocessed activation. Or the blue is the hyper, and that's when the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and the vagus nerve, which happens in mammals, and we're mammals, and we flop down. So a graphic example of that would be like a lion comes into the savannah, chases the gazelle. The gazelle tries to run, tries to flee. Of course, the lion's way bigger, so the lion almost catches the gazelle, but doesn't, because the gazelle feigns dead. It drops like a stone. And that's because its parasympathetic nervous system has kicked in and feigns dead, because in nature that's really clever, because the lion might think, oh, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, no fun.
No fun. The thrill of the chase is all. It might be only what the lion's interested in, so it goes on to saunter off to another gazelle.
Right.
But the gazelle saved its life. So this blue zone, parasympathetic slump, is a really important aspect of trauma. And it's not been understood until Stephen Porges, another US brilliant scientist in the 1990s, really researched this and developed the polyvagal theory. Stephen Porges, Porges, and it's so changing for trauma theory, trauma work, because if you are raped or you're held at knife point, you might feel terribly guilty that you just didn't fight your assailant. You flopped down and you couldn't do diddly squat, so you feel shame. You think I'm a terrible person, and if only I'd have done more. But if you're told that that was your body's best bet in helping you survive, then can you see how revolutionary that is? It's like, you change your attitude to yourself. You change from being full of shame and self-hatred to being compassionate. So the blue zone and the red zone, but sometimes, and this happens a lot, like with my client that was zigzagging, people go from red to blue to red to blue. So they might be talking 100 miles an hour and then suddenly non-responsive, glazed eyes within the same session. So my job will be to try to help them find the green zone, which is, notice something in the room. What attracts you? Can you describe that? You bring them into the here and now to expand the window of tolerance, which is the bit there we feel good.
Yeah.
If you feel safe and happy and all's well-ish with the world.
Yeah. It's doable.
It's doable. It's possible. You're in a green zone.
Yeah.
Which is much nicer.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, until reading your book, I did not know anything about the slump. And so I, traditionally fight, flight, freeze.
Yeah.
And so I imagine there's convergence or overlap with freeze, and that slump is more maybe of a continuation of that, or if it's
a bit different
from acute to chronic.
It's that vagus nerve.
Okay.
The freeze is more fear.
Okay.
Like
Deer in the headlight kind of thing.
Yeah, it's rabbit in the headlight. Whereas the slump actually is a different part of the body and the mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it might come out, and this is really interesting, in somebody who is hopeless and helpless and doesn't get off their backside and actually might be judged for that.
Right.
So the stories of Gemma in my book, who's, she's worked at a drive-through. She's had multiple siblings, all of whom took up the parents' space. She was neglected. She underachieved. Everybody compared her to her sisters. And she just thinks she's no good. And what's the point? And she's in a hopeless slump. She's in the blue zone. Until she works at a drive-through, and some lady comes and gets the McDonald's or whatever and looks at her and says, I'm ever so sorry, I'm on my mobile phone. And Gemma's little eye has a tear. And she says, nobody ever notices us.
Right. Or apologizes.
No.
Right.
Who even notices that I'm here?
Yeah.
And then the next bit of the story is so cute, because the lady who's in the car notices the tear, comes back to see Gemma later on that night, and says, did you go to school? She says, no. She said, well, I actually work at an adult education college, and we have a special program for people who didn't achieve at school. If you come, you can find an introduction. So basically it changed everything. Just being noticed.
Yeah.
And she's no longer slumped. But so many people are slumping. I mean, think of people who go to the doctors incessantly. And I've heard GPs, we call them GPs in this country, they say heart sink patients. Not very nice term, heart sink patients. But I get why. Because they come in with, a pain in their shoulder, a pain in their neck, a pain in their foot, and none of it is really what's going on. It's their hearts are broken, they're not noticed, they're chronically unmirrored.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what that effect that has on the body, on the nervous system. Huge.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be fixed by medicine. Well, it might be. Some of the symptoms might go. But the person's probably in a hypo slump.
Yeah, yeah. I almost wonder if that's an adjacent, or again, maybe slightly convergent with like a kind of mourning process where there's a loss, there is a sudden severance of connection. Not that they had connection as a slumping person, but that maybe the generic expression that comes out could be similar to that of someone who's experienced a loss and in that grieving, they're just, I have nothing, my whole life's been ripped out from me. And maybe they're in that slow motion kind of grieving for the absence of connection or the absence of a good mirror. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Maybe? I think they kind of, actually, you're right.
Okay.
Broken loss of the connection.
Right.
Isolation, or the loss of anything that you ever had. Either way, it's loss, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Either way, you're slumped. Whether you had it and lost it or never had it.
Like the old cliche, to have loved and lost rather than to have not loved at all. I mean, it's,
yeah,
I don't know, they can't be that far apart.
No, I think that's right. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad you noticed the too much and the too little, because I think I kind of put that out at the beginning, don't I, to kind of say about the polarities of trauma. And I think it's a useful thing. And I also think we see it in our national life, international life, the kind of overreactiveness or the kind of can't do anything slump.
Yeah.
We go from one to the other in our response to that. Sometimes.
I have a personal pet theory that we are scale invariant as a species, that the individual can go through a raft of affective and emotional malaise or good things, positively valent things, but collectively in groups, I think when we are in an existential crisis, or we are feeling in America we talk about this loneliness epidemic, which is just inappropriate connection, in my opinion. It's just insufficient connection, or whatever you want to call it, that's substituting. So the individual can do that, or 100,000 people could do that, or 8.5 billion people, with obvious little caveats attached. But I mean, I just think that we are so universally constructed in similarity that I think there is some scaling capacity there that we can recognize, like you were just saying, and grant ourselves that capacity to be reflective of that, or metacognitive of that, and say, wow, and that goes right back to interconnectedness that we started, when we started the conversation. So I don't know what you could do with that, but just ameliorate the sense of helplessness, I guess, maybe. Because it is stigmergic, it is collective, right? It's like there's a kinetic energy to it or something.
Yeah, but I think what we can do with it is to notice all the ways and means possible to make connection. We had this thing in our village during COVID where we had a little WhatsApp kindness for the village, and people who were left on their own, we all kind of did stuff, and people said that made such a difference to them during COVID. Now we've probably lost all that now. Something good came out of it, right? But if we find a little way just to even smile at somebody at a checkout, it's like the story of Gemma. You never know what that does. I have a theory about smiling, because actually smiling does. It goes through to this nerve here and goes down to the heart, makes us feel.
Okay.
If you see the crinkling of the eyes here, that shows that the nerve is going to the right place. They're all technical words for it. But I've always had a theory since being a young woman, if you smile at somebody, even a stranger, even more a stranger, it's a kind of personal experiment that I have. I go along the street, smile at somebody.
I love it.
Back. If people smile back, it's magic.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
sometimes look really surprised. But you notice if you don't do the smiling thing, which I invariably try to,
yeah,
people look generally pretty miserable and pretty isolated and pretty
yeah.
drudgery,
Right, right.
But why wouldn't we just try that?
Yeah,
To smile,
yeah, yeah.
Hey, it doesn't cost you anything, does it?
Not at all. Not at all. I find myself when in the right mood. I did this yesterday in a grocery store after work. I was walking around the store and I'd see someone make eye contact and I just, just get just like half smile, not a full Duchenne smile, but like a light smile, and and some would react, others would be, sort of straight ahead and non-responsive, but I caught a few people and they're like, they would nod friendly back to me. And I completely agree. When you can do that, these little micro actions, you don't know how they're going to reverberate out. That person might have been lifted just a little bit by your effortless gesture,
And you don't know what, if you think about trauma being like the volcano, or in my little here, it's
yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
And chapter 3 is about triggering, because, when we get triggered, that eclipses our whole thing. But one of the things that is so hard when you're stuck in that death life kind of modality is that all of your little receptors that you have for goodness, and we do have receptors to take in goodness, a nice smile face or a lovely tree or a sunny sky. Well, it's not that we don't have them anymore, but they're eclipsed. They're eclipsed by trauma. So if you think about that, a little tiny thing like you just did in the store, or stopping to smell something beautiful like a rose, might just make its way into the egg. Little tiny crack, little crack appears, something can get in. Yeah. So I think that's so true. A little goes away, just to bring those triggers back.
Absolutely.
Those back.
Yeah. No, it's good medicine. It's good medicine, both for both parties, because when you do get that little response, it's like, there is humanity, and I mean humanity in a lovely sense of humanity, and that helps me. Like I came out of the grocery store yesterday thinking, not overtly, but just, lightly that, that we are capable of these little connections. Just right. And that I feel better. I feel more secure in my environment, talking about and like attaching to people that I feel a little more secure walking through the parking lot now, knowing that there are good humans about.
Right. Because I mean, I do my smiling thing, not because I'm a particularly wonderful person, because I want to feel better, And if you think about that in terms of survival, evolution, it was better for us in our tribe to be connected than not connected, wasn't it? So, and this is why communal living and working as a group is so much better.
I always like to keep a narco-primitivist card on my table when I'm thinking through like problem solving and meaning making and sense making. And it's not that, because people will criticize, it's the idea of studying our history and like what worked 10,000 years ago. And obviously we can't go back to the Younger Dryas and do like they did in early settlement periods. No, but like you just said, look at modern tribes in New Guinea and South America and Africa and the steppes. They have a thing that works, and there are no Jeff Bezos in those communities, and there's no deeply impoverished people in those communities. They sort of are, like you said, they're connected, they're communal. There's obviously issues. It's not utopia, but they're put together in a way that helps that cluster, that cell of people to live eudaimonically a good life, not so much hedonically, but eudaimonically, where everybody is being taken care of. And I find that so inspirational. Having just talked about scalability, I don't think we could apply that rigidly, but just the spirit of that you see proof of concept out there that this is our history, but it's also a potential future possibility if done right. If the spirit of that could be embedded or ensconced in.
Yeah. And often the spirit of that, I like that, it is about groups, because we don't go back to, we can't be primitive peoples and a tribe. But if we can take the principles of that, so for example, you can imagine a primitive group of people are attacked by bears. Their compound is, compromised. They have a scary night. They all get together. They mend the fences so they're safe. They do that first, right? Very important to have enough safety. Then they sit around in a circle and they say, "Oh, that was a scary night. Oh, well, when that bear came for me, it was really awful." And they wail and they say, "Yeah," and they tell the story and they're all together. And then they stop doing that.
Yeah.
Got the fences fixed. They go out and they dare to reach for the berries. This is Carolyn Spring's idea. She's a trauma specialist. She tells the story about that. And I love that because if you think about the group, think about group therapy. We have a thing in this country, it's postcode lottery, sadly, but if you're a very, very distressed person who's a terrible background, you might be given the chance to go to a complex needs series. It means going to a group.
Okay.
And being in a group for 2 or 3 years where you've got a psychiatrist who's cool, who just sits with these people and teaches them a few things, like pre-therapy. But it's group. And then after those 2 years, the person can bear to look at themselves individually with somebody, and it's happened. So groups, whatever groups are, whether they're churches, whether they're yoga classes or whatever they are, I love groups.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it's so ingrained in us. Again, you talk about the kinetic energy of a large social system and the stigmergy that, and I use that word as a metaphor more than what it really means, but just the kinetic wave that comes with our history propelling us forward. It's only in recent times, maybe since the Enlightenment project, that we have been individuated out in a sense of I don't know, just individualistic thinking, like the Rock Island kind of mentality, and divorcing ourselves from that history, that lineage of cooperative behavior and the affordance of security and safety and all those wonderful things that come with that. Yeah, I think that's where we are impoverished in the West. I speak for America only in my sense, or perhaps I could be so bold to speak for Europe, since we're very close. But yeah, I think a visitation of that to extract, again, the virtues that could arise, I think is something that could be examined and utilized. If you're good, I would like to, we talked about slumping and we talked a little bit about fight and flight, but were there things from fight and flight relating to discovering ourselves as traumatized persons that you want to put forward? And then maybe we'll move into the like you said, the last chapter of the book where you talk about resiliency and recognizing good and bad fragility, and then you had your 20 points, the solutions at the end of the book. So, but let's cover if there's space that we need to open up for fighting and flighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be good. I think a lot of the people in the world are stuck in fight flight, and it's really difficult to do anything different because the survival messages are so strong to say keep doing those things. So I call the fighting, flipping our lids, getting lost into the red mist, and I also think that fighting comes from fear. So if you think of fear being like a trampoline, if we're scared, think of somebody who comes back from, Afghanistan or something, like a veteran. They've had far too much terror. So I think fear is like a slippery fish. It's quite hard to know about, but we certainly know that we react from it. Think of the trampoline. So you touch the fear and you spring up into anger. And you've got the red mist, so they might start shouting at their kids for being noisy or something, Or
and you made an example,
right?
And that was one of your examples in the book.
Yeah,
a veteran.
A veteran was an example of him. So that's the triggering, that's the anger. But the anger is pointing to the other thing. you know.
Okay.
So it's about really giving space to understanding how that discharge, and I like the fact that in both fight flight, there's this charge of energy that's being either directed in punching, defending, or running for the hills through trying to calm myself through drugs or substance abuses or changing partners every 5 minutes or not getting the truth or whatever it is, anything rather than, as Scott Peck said, stay with what's real. But all of it needs discharge and other stuff. Either discharge as in take yourself to the edge, because actually some of trauma's power needs to be fully, like the gazelle after it's been dropped by the lion, doesn't just walk back quietly. Oh no, it shoots like a bat out of hell because that charge has to be expressed.
Yeah.
So some of trauma therapy has to complete the arc. So there was a French guy called Pierre Janet, 1860, first trauma therapist, a long time ago.
Okay.
He talks about if you peel an orange, the zest comes out into the air, it rises and it falls. So we have to complete our circles. So sometimes discharging our charge is what we need to do. Think of going to a sauna, taking yourself to the edge through exercise. Of course, be careful because those things can be addictive too. But they can also release some of this charge. Think of wild water swimming. Takes the body to an edge.
Okay.
So discharge matters. 3 jam jars. First jam jar, you might want to describe it. It's just a small jam jar and it's got a little tennis ball in. And the tennis ball is almost filling the whole space. That's what trauma is like.
Okay.
So the charge is the tennis ball and the jam jar is us. There's not much going on other than trauma. Second jam jar. Oops. Sorry, Justin. Second jam jar.
No problem.
Is a bigger space. So maybe still a lot of reactivity going on, a lot of charge, a lot of trauma needing to be expressed, and there's a bit of space for it. So you may be getting triggered every now and again, but there's some other good stuff, right? And you may be doing some work on yourself and trying to think about these things. This last jam jar is post-traumatic growth. So you see the point. The triggering is still there. This is not a perfect metaphor because sometimes the tennis ball might go a bit smaller. So, but the point is that it's still there. The trigger, the trauma doesn't go away.
Right.
You know, we don't resolve it. We might discharge it so that it isn't dominating us, but it's still there. But hey, if we do get triggered, we're going to recover so much quicker. Because there's so much other stuff. We know our triggers, by the way.
Yep.
We know them. So it's like, aha, I see you coming. And I know what to do. Yeah. I know that means that something's been touched. And when I do that, I need special care. I need to phone a friend. I need to go to do my boxing. Whatever it is I need to do. But I might have a million things I need to do. But I'm in a different place. So that's kind of a short version of what to do about fight flight. But don't you think that's a more relieving idea?
Yeah. No, I love that metaphor because there's dimensionality to it in the sense that you've afforded yourself greater space, greater fluidity, more option space, you know, to have that ball there. And yet you're not as trapped with the ball as you were in the smaller jar. You scaled up to a space where the ball is less significant, maybe.
It's hopeful.
Occupies less space. Yeah. No, I love that. In my admiring your anecdotes in your book, I had I have a story to share from a call that I made last night, and if you don't mind a tangent, during COVID, much like your village, a lot of places in the U.S. were locked down, including New York City. And I found online this, I wanted something to volunteer for. There was in Brooklyn, New York, there was a city-run organization that helped senior citizens. And prior to COVID, they would do in-person visits to the elderly, checking in on them, wellness checks, as well as companionship. And so with the novelty of COVID and its lockdowns, I was able to do it remotely for them. And so I went through a spate of elderly folks as they needed. And I would just call them once a week and have a conversation with them. Had some wonderful people. Anyway, I have a woman now who I speak with, and she, in the course of last week, she was on her computer and a viral thing popped up, a page popped up, hijacked her frame, her screen, and she didn't know, like, you just shut it off, put it to sleep, or do a control escape or whatever. She kind of like, got that response that it was, oh my God, my computer's been hijacked. And it was the prestige of, we are the white knights that are going to, we have the solution, and we found this virus on your computer. So anyway, she went down this rabbit hole, the scam, and she went as far as to actually physically have cash on her person to take it somewhere, for a Microsoft representative or something. I can't remember the totality of the narrative, but basically she stopped inches short of being taken advantage of and losing considerable amount of cash. And in our conversation, she was repeating themes of shame and embarrassment and vulnerability and fragility and all of this. And I kept saying to her, all of us in the modern age, get this. This happens. I've been compromised before because of my naivete, just not knowing not to do certain things historically. So I said to her, no, this was a masterclass for you. Thank goodness you didn't get taken advantage of. And I would recommend 3 or 4 further steps, because she did take cautionary steps. She addressed this with her bank. She's going to have the computer looked at. I said, I would do X, Y, and Z to further your confidence that this will not go any further for you. Yeah. But in light of in what we've been discussing, for her to tell me that she felt shame, I thought, no, I'm so sorry. Go through it. I told her, don't stifle that. But I said, when you come out of that, I said, no, that this is just, it was an opportunity a teaching moment, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. But also for me, I was like, wow, if I do something, then I have to practice what I just said to her, and not beat myself up, because there's some pretty slick operations out there that can take advantage of you and overwhelm you and things like that. But thank goodness I think everything's okay. But to hear her go through the story, I just
that's such a good story, and it's so true. What one aspect of trauma, and it's a whole chapter on shame in the book.
Yes.
We pull away. Mm-hmm. Because if we're young and we're let down, we think it's our fault, because it's safer to think that than think that the people who are supposed to love us are wrong. That's dangerous. So that's one reason why we feel this shame. And it can become all pervasive and so damaging, and it can become a default position, like Velcro, it sticks to itself.
Yeah.
But I love your frame there of just saying it's a workshop for life, or it's a, what did you say?
Like a teaching moment, or
moment.
My supervisor says that to me when I make mistakes. She goes, "This is the teaching moment." I'm like, okay, I screwed up, but Disney used to call it areas of opportunity. I worked for Disney years ago, and when you screwed up, they call, you have an area of opportunity. I'm like, oh, what a euphemism. I love it. I'm still in trouble, but
it's a great thing, because what we do is we have a view of ourselves and the world, which might be coloured by trauma, but then we can reframe it, put a new frame around it, and say, hey, okay, everybody screws up. By the way, there's a wonderful relief if we realise we mess up every day a zillion times, like I do.
Right.
We can reframe it and put it into a new frame, and look, there's all these other things we can say about it, which are a lot nicer and healthier. And we need a bit of shame, or guilt, because otherwise we wouldn't have some corrective. But many of us are way too much.
That's the thing. No.
I don't know whether it's helpful, as we kind of draw to a close, whether it's helpful, but you tell me if it won't be, Justin, just for me to read one sentence about each chapter.
Yes, please.
Would that be
and then maybe a quick bullet list of the
Bullet
of
list.
not all 20, but just a couple bullet lists of the things that you list at the end of the book at the conclusion of chapter. Was it 20? Is that the
Yeah.
last chapter?
Or would you prefer me to do chapter 20 rather than the whole 20?
No, let's. I like what you're suggesting. Let's do a little snippet of each chapter, and then maybe
And then
a
we can do a
conclusion.
bit of 20.
Yeah, a bit of summary for the end. So.
Okay, perfect. So number 1, chapter 1. Well, what is trauma? Trauma is what happens when life is too much for us, and it's our powerful, unresolved experience. It's not something big and scary, but it can be broken down into bite-sized chunks. Chapter 1, trauma takes us over. We can feel on a whitewater raft without control of the currents. We can feel, rather than feeling safe and calm, we can feel too aroused, revved up, red zone, or too little, under the radar, zoned out. Second chapter, trauma scrambles time, stopping us in our flow, or like a lock in a canal that doesn't flow. Chapter 3, trauma can repeat little tiny bits of pain when we get triggered, like a slither or a reminder of pain that wants to come back and show us. It needs to be expressed. Now, chapter 4 is trauma makes us want to fight or flee away from pain or cover it up. That's 4 and 5. Chapter 6, when something scary happens, we freeze like a deer in the headlights, hoping that nothing bad will happen again. Another solution, chapter 7, is to collapse. This happens in the animal kingdom too. Chapter 8, trauma can hijack our brains so we can't think or process or experience stuff properly. Chapter 9 is we get very fixed on things, like a limpet on a rock, concrete, rigid thinking, no flexibility or nuance. Chapter 10 is that we disconnect from a scary, terrible experience. So there's a gulf that opens up between us and our experience. We can be hyper disconnected. So you think of somebody who's a criminal or somebody locked in a kind of cell of their own mind. They're disconnected from the world and just at the mercy of their own impulses. Very scary. Chapter 11 is we can send fragments of our experience into compartments in our minds. They come back as triggers. One trigger can eclipse the whole of us, like the jack-in-a-box. Chapter 12 is all about the body. The body can hold our experience. Chapter 13 is trauma shatters our trust in others. Although we might need them, we push them away. Chapter 14 is when we get traumatized. It may not be safe enough to cry, so we send our cries underground. Chapter 15, if trauma happens to us, we can come to the conclusion that the bad thing was our fault and we're bad. Shame can drench us like driving rain. Chapter 16, trauma breaks our hearts. Pain and the too much of trauma are bound up together. 17, trauma cuts us off from others and can mean we feel profoundly lonely. We've touched on all of these things in our conversation, in fact, haven't we? Chapter 18, we can get easily caught up in destructive cycles, like a vortex, and get out of balance, losing our equilibrium. Chapter 19, we can become the overflow of other people's traumas, like me with Tiananmen. Traumas can get passed down in families, in institutions, and down generations. Chapter 20, twice as long. Trauma can help us build resilience. There are 10 resilience steps in chapter 20, twice as long as any other chapter. Understanding that trauma has happened to us can really help. We can find ways to break free through this. And it can take discipline, post-trauma weight training, but we can pay attention to our feelings, learn to trust them as barometers. We can learn to set good boundaries and learn where our limits are. We can recognise that traps have locked us into trauma and we have beliefs which go round and round. But we can also think, what really brings us life? What can help mend our broken hearts and make us like a kintsugi Japanese vase, kintsugi, yeah, even stronger. We can learn to self-soothe, nurture ourselves, bring life to the cracks that trauma has dried out, and let beauty in. We can find meaningful things to engage with in our post-trauma best life. That's a little summary.
Thank you for doing that.
Pleasure.
It whets the appetite, and B, if you've read the book and come back, then this is a nice summary for all of us to be in the presence of. If that helps.
Yeah, but I would say
remind and reiterate.
Yeah, I would say though, as a kind of government health warning, that the book is not to be read all in one lot. It's a dip and pick and mix book. It's a dipping in and out book. It's a first aid for trauma. So, you might not even resonate with half of those chapters, but one or two might be, oh yeah, that's what, yeah. Right. So you just read, because they're all self-explanatory. You don't have to do. And I think that's kind of important, because reading about trauma is kind of hard, because it's, a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. Right.
So little bits, bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
Is what I recommend. Yeah.
No, I agree, because you're not breaking anything up if you jump around. I read it front to back, and
you did?
Yeah, I started with, I went 1 through 20.
You should have a medal.
What? No, I did 20 pages a night, and it was easy. I basically a chapter at a time. Because, you get into you appreciate the flow of the book, and then at the end, and then we didn't even mention this, that as we end near the end of a chapter, that you have a bit of prose, and then you have suggestions, and then a meditation. So I love the comprehensive nature of I just read some of, this info dump, as the young people say, and now what do I do with it? Well, now you can think about the poetry that you just wrote for one of the persons that was mentioned in anecdote, and then the meditation that comes along, which it has utility, as I like to say.
Has utility, and the prose and the meditation and the poetry are kind of other ways of coming at the same thing. Poetry is kind of another level of consciousness, isn't it? It's like a little footnote. Okay, yes. So all that information dump, as you say, and now let's think about it.
Right.
Yeah. Would it be nice to end with a little meditation or a poem?
Let's do that, please. Yeah, let's do that, please. I think that would be a wonderful way to bring this in.
Okay. Would you like me to do a little tiny poem? I tell you what I'll do. I could do my surrender to gravity exercise. I love it, and most people who I've done it with really like it. I go to a homeless shelter, and I do it with the workers.
Okay. Yeah.
So we do the surrender to gravity, and then I will end with a tiny poem from the end of the introduction. How's that?
Sounds good. Sounds wonderful.
So you enjoy it too, Justin?
I am. I'm going to be in the moment here.
Okay. So, a child's slide. Think of your breathing. Imagine ascending the steps of a slide as you take in regular, repeated sips of breath. When you've filled your lungs at the top of the slide, allow yourself a very long exhale. While imagining your descent, push the breath as far as you can along the flat side to reach right to the end. Surrender to gravity exercise. Rest your body on the chair or on the ground. Make sure your feet are touching the ground, supporting you. Find exactly the right position for you. Take a little time to properly arrive in your body for a moment. Adjust your position carefully to make yourself super comfortable. Imagine your body is making an imprint in the warm sand what would it look like? Would there be any difference on one side or the other? As you imagine this, feel the weight of your body sinking lower, really supporting you from underneath. Gently roll your head from one side to another, taking time to stop in the middle. Feel the weight of your head and the muscles working as you do this. Let your knees fall just a little from side to side. As you do this, really feel the weight of your pelvis and your glutes get a little massage from underneath. Surrender to gravity. Gravity is my best friend. Always present, always available, always ready to respond. Gravity is holding me, letting me sink and absorbing all my stress downwards. Where I am, I begin here, breathing in the good air, exhaling, pausing my out-breath. Love in this rhythm, this song, peeping out, daring to look with hope, even from here.
I felt the sand. I felt the rotation. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, because I have arthritis in my neck, so I'm constantly doing that to like try to, well, let's be flexible. Let's not be in pain, And so I appreciate that we can rotate and the knees and just the flexibility, to then, recognize that the effect that the pull of gravity has on us. So yeah, no, that's a very grounding exercise.
I love that grounding gravity thing. And if you think about it, when you want to go to sleep, you have to have a heavy body, right?
Right.
Otherwise, no sleep for you.
Oh, that's cute. You know what I do to myself to try to fall asleep is I build things in my head, greenhouses or cabins out in the woods, and it's so tedious and mundane. I'm like, okay, and then you need we need to stack this and when I build a greenhouse, I do a heat exchange with passive earth, and so I make it somewhat complex, and I overwhelm that fidgety cortex thing that wants to talk about and ruminate everything, everything that happened, and I'm like, no, we're going to build a green. And it works. It shuts me right down. And I'll wake up 2 hours later.
You're containing.
Yeah. And it's creative too, because I love
creative.
Greenhouses.
I love it. I love a greenhouse. I've got a greenhouse. I love it.
Oh, that's what I love about Europe.
Place.
Europe and the UK is you guys just the gardens, especially down in Portsmouth and in the south in Cornwall. And you're growing Trachycarpus palms. I love plants. I love botany and horticulture. So I watch a ton. Oh, the fan palms that are growing down in like Isle of Wight and Cornwall and down at Land's End. And there's that huge biosphere down there, isn't there?
Oh, there is a biosphere down there.
Next time I get to UK, that's beeline right down there. Didn't they film Doc Martin down that way?
Yes. Do you like Doc Martin?
Oh, my wife and I watched that. Yeah. That was
it's
wonderful.
A wonderful thing.
Wonderful. And talk about contrasts in human emotional bandwidth and capacity for communication, that he was this, probably on the spectrum, probably
totally.
Very socially awkward, but nonetheless brilliant. And his spouse, his counterpart, was constantly beleaguered. Yeah, wonderful. We missed the 9th season. We watched, because we used to, I don't really do TV much anymore, but that was the last hurrah, was Doc Martin. We did 8 seasons with that. And then the 9th season was supposed to come out, and I guess I have to go see if they did actually produce that season.
I don't know whether it did. It's worth checking.
Yeah, there was. I had never followed up, but I was. But yes, wonderful.
But the way that it's set in that beautiful little Cornish village is absolutely idyllic. Yeah.
And the characters, just some of the lady that was doing CBT that had a stalking thing with the pharmacist, the chemist.
The characterizations were hilarious.
Yeah,
just as a complete aside, though, just as a tangential, But there is another Doc Martin, Doc_Martin, not the same
Oh,
man, not Martin Clunes, who's a
oh,
doctor, who's a mental health doctor, and he's very big on Instagram. In fact, he's all over Instagram, and he
okay.
does great little videos, little reels on mental health. And he and I know each other a little bit. He's nicked Doc Martin because he's called Martin Brunette.
Yes. Okay. To
He's used
differentiate.
he's used it very cleverly.
Okay.
But if
Okay.
anybody who's listening is interested, Doc Martin on the Instagram, some great stuff.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, that's good. And yeah, you do have to differentiate. And the I forget the actress's name because it's been a few years, but the woman who played his wife, whom he married, and
Yeah,
had a child with,
that's right.
she's a musician, I believe, or she was a
Is
singer
she?
or something. I want to say yes because she's a fan of Heidi Berry, or she's associated with Heidi Berry, and I love Heidi Berry. Folk singer. Her music's very depressing if you're not like in the right space, but
Oh,
Heidi Berry is a wonderful
oh, thank
English
you for that.
songwriter.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's very sanguine music at
yeah.
times. She's on the 4AD label, which should say something like This Mortal Coil
Oh, okay.
and Dead Can Dance and things like that. But
Mm.
Heidi Berry is so powerful and so
Heidi
profound.
Berry. Okay, I'll
Heidi
write that
Berry,
down.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
But I
Good.
love her. I love her music. So anyway, but yeah, that was the one other connection that I found from that show that I was like, oh my
Yeah,
God. But I think that she played the actress that was on the show plays the violin or something. She's a
I
very
didn't know
talented
that.
person. Yeah, yeah, wonderful.
Good.
Wonderful. Oh
Wonderful.
yeah, I love British television because when I was 13, I moved from Washington D.C. down into the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and this was in primitive times before satellite and cable. You know, they had satellites, but they were like the size of a van, a car or something, the big ones, and only wealthy people could afford them. So I
Yeah.
had a UHF antenna on the house, and the only thing I could get was a public radio thing out of James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is like 35, 40 miles away. But the UHF signal could carry over the mountains to where we were.
Mm.
And all they did was British comedies from the 70s. So Faulty Towers,
Oh,
um,
wow.
To the Manor Born,
Yeah.
Good Neighbors with
Oh,
Penelope
this is
Keith, which was just, so I grew up on Brit comedy and it was just perfect because the
oh,
humor, it's like,
yeah, the
especially, you know,
humor.
like things like Faulty Towers. Oh, and the
Faulty
Fall and
Towers.
Rise of Reginald Perrin was
Oh,
wonderful.
amazing. Yeah, there's so many of them. They're
It
wonderful.
formed me as a
Yeah.
child.
Well,
My teenage.
I'm interested that you came from Virginia because I had a good friend in Charlottesville. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I know
When
Charlottesville.
I got out of high school in Washington D.C. and I moved back closer to Charlottesville to work at a ski resort because I was a cook and a chef just out of high school. I was a cook, but went on to be a chef after a while. Yeah, that area is so gorgeous, so beautiful. I moved to Florida from there, and I don't regret that, but I do miss the mountains and the trees
Mm,
and the beauty and all that.
very
So.
beautiful. Yeah.
Ah,
Mm,
Philippa, this has been a fulfilling and informative conversation. I hope I can speak for the audience that your work is touching and inspiring and useful and you know it's beyond some dry. As you said when you began the book, it was going to be a little more dry, a little more
yeah.
technical, but then you open it up with the vulnerability of human experience and all these things. So you've woven a wonderful tapestry with your book, and I can't sing its praises enough for
Thank
that
you.
people that are beginning a journey of you know self-care and recovery. You know, one thing with our health, I don't want to get on a soapbox, but our healthcare system in this country, if you don't have insurance, it's hard to get good therapy.
Mm.
So find what's available to you at little cost. That can
That's
be
kind
like
of
the
why I
group that,
wrote the book. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it could be like the
Not everybody
pre-therapy,
can
like you were
afford
talking
therapy,
about. Yes,
and
exactly.
it's so
You know,
hard to access good stuff. And so,
yeah,
yeah, that's why I wrote it. But thank you. And
yeah.
thank you for
No,
your
I think that.
words. I really enjoyed the conversation. It was lovely talking to you last time when we had our preliminary conversation. And it was lovely to talk to you this time. And I
Oh, I
think it's
appreciate
great that
that.
you're doing this Ideas Cast on a Friday. You know, I will listen to some more of your episodes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, there's some people on there that you would appreciate. In fact, I just interviewed, I haven't uploaded the conversation yet, but he was an English literature he got his I think he got his doctoral in or maybe a master's in English literature, and he is now a narrative therapist. He went and got a psych
Oh,
degree or social work, licensed clinical social worker, and he uses narrative therapy. So he took that love and the affinity for literature, and has converted that into a mode of therapy. So he was an interest. So when he comes out, I'll send you the link.
Oh, do.
Yeah, I'm due to upload him soon. So
And when this will be uploaded, I'll be able to find it and everything.
yes.
else.
Oh, indeed. I will make sure you get the links. We're recording close to the end of August. You'll probably I will upload our conversation today, probably late September, because I think I'm about 4 conversations out, and it's usually every 10 days I upload. So, but you'll absolutely get the links. So,
Okay.
Philippa, thank you so much. I'll say goodbye to you after I say goodbye to the audience.
Yeah.
After I stop record. YouTube audience, thank you so much for your attention and your presence. I hope this was a wonderful conversation. Links to Philippa's site, her website, and I will get a link for her book down in the description field or the show notes, depending on how you like to say that. And I will see you in the next conversation. But thank you so much for being here for this one. So take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.